Have you noticed that the conversation about aging has become strangely mechanical? We speak of it as if it were a machine to be optimized, a problem to be solved, a set of numbers to be improved. But there is something deeper that the longevity discussions often miss, something that the healthiest people who live the longest seem to understand intuitively. They do not chase youth. They do not fear their advancing years. Instead, they have discovered something that changes everything about how they move through life. In the next hour, we are going to explore what they have found. Not another list of tips, not a prescription for living forever, but a different way of understanding what it means to grow older with strength, clarity, and meaning. You are listening to the Longevity Library, where we archive the wisdom of healthy aging. Living long, living well. A calm examination of what makes a long and healthy life. There is something quietly compelling about the question of how to live a long time. Not just to accumulate years, but to carry health and vitality through them. It is a question that has occupied human attention for as long as records exist, perhaps longer. Ancient texts from China speak of sages who practice certain ways of moving and breathing. Greek physicians wrote about the importance of balance in all things. In villages scattered across the modern world, researchers have found communities where people routinely live into their 90s and beyond, often with remarkably little chronic disease. What these investigations reveal is not a single secret, not one magic substance or practice that guarantees a long life. Instead, they point toward patterns, ways of living that seem to shape the trajectory of aging in favorable directions. These patterns appear across cultures and throughout history, suggesting something fundamental about how human bodies respond to certain conditions. This is not a guide to beating death. Death is not beatable, and any honest discussion of longevity must begin there. The goal is not immortality, but something perhaps more valuable: the preservation of function, the maintenance of independence, the continuation of activities that give life meaning. It is about compressing the period of decline at the end of life into as short a time as possible, so that most of life is lived well. What follows is an examination of what researchers have observed about people who live long, healthy lives. It draws from studies of populations around the world, from physiological research on how bodies change with age, and from the accumulated wisdom of cultures that have thought deeply about these questions. The ideas are presented not as commands, but as observations, things worth considering, patterns worth exploring in one's own life. Part 1. The body in motion. What happens when bodies move? Consider for a moment what occurs inside the body during physical movement. Muscles contract and relax in sequence, pulling on bones to create motion. The heart rate increases, pumping blood more forcefully through arteries and veins. Lungs expand more fully, drawing in oxygen that travels through the bloodstream to every tissue. Capillaries open wider in active muscles, delivering fuel and removing waste. Nerves fire in coordinated patterns, sending signals that originate in the brain and travel down the spinal cord to reach their targets. This cascade of activity, repeated daily over years, shapes the body in profound ways. Muscles that are regularly challenged maintain their mass and strength. Bones that bear weight retain more of their density. Blood vessels remain flexible and responsive. The heart becomes more efficient, pumping more blood with each beat rather than needing to beat faster. Lungs maintain their capacity to exchange oxygen and carbon dioxide. These changes are not merely about performance in the moment. They represent the body's fundamental adaptation to the demands placed upon it. Human physiology evolved in environments that required regular movement, walking to find food, carrying materials, chasing or escaping, building shelter. The modern environment, for many people, requires very little of this. Bodies designed for motion are placed in conditions of relative stillness. The result is not simply that fitness declines. The result is that systems begin to function less optimally in ways that accumulate over decades. The cardiovascular system provides a clear example. When people move regularly, the inner lining of blood vessels, the endothelium, produces compounds that help vessels dilate appropriately. Blood pressure remains in healthier ranges. When movement is absent, this regulatory capacity diminishes. Vessels become stiffer. The heart works harder to push blood through them. Over time, this contributes to the development of hypertension and its consequences. Similar processes occur throughout the body. The metabolic system becomes less efficient at handling glucose when muscles are not regularly drawing sugar from the bloodstream. The immune system shows altered function in sedentary individuals. Even the brain changes, with reduced production of compounds that support the growth and survival of neurons. The forms movement takes. Movement need not resemble what people typically think of as exercise. The healthiest populations studied around the world do not generally belong to gyms or follow structured workout programs. They move as part of daily life, walking to destinations, tending gardens, performing manual tasks, playing with children, walking animals, climbing stairs because buildings have no elevators. This distinction matters because it affects sustainability. Programs that require special equipment, dedicated time, and significant willpower are difficult to maintain over decades. Movement woven into the fabric of ordinary life requires no such effort. It happens automatically as a byproduct of living. Walking deserves particular attention in this context. It is the most natural form of human movement, requiring no instruction, no equipment beyond appropriate footwear, and no special facilities. It can be done almost anywhere, at almost any time, by people of nearly all fitness levels. The benefits are substantial. Walking improves cardiovascular function, supports joint health through gentle loading, aids digestion, and provides exposure to outdoor environments when done outside. For those who prefer more structured activity, the options are numerous. Swimming provides movement with minimal joint impact, which can be valuable for those with arthritis or other conditions that make weight-bearing activity uncomfortable. Cycling offers similar benefits while allowing exploration of greater distances. Resistance training, whether with weights, elastic bands, or body weight, helps maintain the muscle mass that tends to decline with age. The key is not which form of movement one chooses, but that movement occurs regularly. The body responds to consistency more than intensity. A daily walk provides more benefit than a weekly strenuous workout followed by 6 days of inactivity. The goal is to be a person who moves, not a person who occasionally exercises. Finding the sustainable level. For someone who has been largely sedentary, beginning a movement practice requires care. The body adapts to whatever conditions it experiences regularly. If those conditions have involved little movement, the tissues are not prepared for sudden increases in demand. Muscles will fatigue quickly. Joints may ache. The cardiovascular system will be challenged. Starting gently and progressing slowly allows adaptation to occur without injury or discouragement. A 10-minute walk daily is a reasonable beginning. When that becomes comfortable, extending to 15 minutes, then 20, eventually, 30 minutes becomes not a challenge, but a normal part of the day. The concept of movement snacks has gained attention in recent years, brief periods of activity scattered throughout the day rather than one continuous session. 3 10-minute walks provide similar benefits to one 30-minute walk and may be easier to fit into daily routines. A few minutes of stair climbing, a walk after meals, a stretch break during prolonged sitting. These small movements accumulate meaningfully. What matters most is that movement becomes habitual, no longer requiring decision and willpower, but occurring as automatically as brushing teeth or making morning tea. This is the pattern observed in long-lived populations. Movement is not something they do for health, but simply something they do. Part 2. The question of food. Beyond nutrients and calories, discussions of food and health often become mired in debates about specific nutrients, whether fat is harmful, whether carbohydrates should be restricted, whether certain vitamins should be supplemented. These debates, while scientifically interesting, can obscure more fundamental truths about how humans have eaten throughout history. Long-lived populations around the world eat very different diets. In Okinawa, traditional eating emphasizes sweet potatoes, green vegetables, and soy products with very little meat or dairy. In Sardinia, the diet includes more animal products, sheep's milk cheese, meat consumed occasionally, along with abundant vegetables, legumes, and whole grains. In Ikaria, the pattern resembles a traditional Mediterranean diet with olive oil, vegetables, and moderate fish consumption. What these diets share is not specific foods, but certain qualities. They are built around whole foods rather than industrially processed products. They include abundant plant material, vegetables, fruits, legumes, whole grains. They contain relatively little added sugar. They are eaten in cultural contexts that include shared meals and often moderate portions. This observation has led many researchers to conclude that the specific composition of a healthy diet may matter less than its fundamental characteristics. A diet composed primarily of whole foods, with vegetables at the center, eaten in reasonable quantities, appears to support health across many different cultural expressions. The processing question. The distinction between whole foods and processed foods deserves particular attention. Industrial food processing does more than change the form of foods, it changes their effects on the body. Whole foods contain complex matrices of nutrients, fiber, and bioactive compounds that interact with digestive processes in ways that processed foods do not. Consider the difference between eating an apple and drinking apple juice. The apple contains fiber that slows the absorption of its sugars, feeds beneficial gut bacteria, and creates a feeling of fullness that limits consumption. The juice delivers concentrated sugar rapidly, spiking blood glucose and insulin, and provides little satiety. Both come from the same fruit. The processing has transformed their physiological effects. Similar comparisons can be made across food categories. Whole grains retain the bran and germ that contain most of their nutrients and fiber. Refined grains have these components removed, leaving mostly starch that is rapidly digested. The body responds differently to these two forms. This is not to say that all processed foods are harmful. Many traditional food preparation methods, fermentation, soaking, cooking, are forms of processing that can improve nutritional quality. The issue is the degree and nature of processing. Foods that bear little resemblance to their original form, that have been engineered for shelf stability and palatability rather than nutritional quality, tend to be those associated with poorer health outcomes. Protein and the aging body. One nutrient deserves special consideration for older adults. Protein. The body's ability to use dietary protein for muscle maintenance becomes less efficient with age. This phenomenon, sometimes called anabolic resistance, means that older adults may need more protein than younger adults to achieve the same effect on muscle protein synthesis. The practical implication is that protein should be distributed across meals rather than concentrated in one. Consuming adequate protein at breakfast, lunch, and dinner provides a steady supply of amino acids to support muscle maintenance throughout the day. A pattern of minimal protein at breakfast and lunch followed by a large protein dose at dinner is less effective. Good protein sources include animal products for those who consume them: eggs, dairy, fish, poultry, meat. Plant sources include legumes, soy products, nuts, seeds, and whole grains. Combining different plant proteins throughout the day provides all essential amino acids without requiring careful matching at each meal. For those who struggle to consume enough protein through food alone, supplements can be considered. Whey protein, derived from milk, is well studied and effective. Plant-based protein powders are available for those who prefer them. These should supplement food, not replace it, and are generally not necessary for those who consume adequate protein through their regular diet. The pattern of eating. When people eat may matter as much as what they eat. The body's metabolic processes follow circadian rhythms, daily cycles that affect how foods are handled. Eating large meals late in the evening, close to bedtime, may be less optimal than consuming more food earlier in the day when metabolic processes are more active. This observation aligns with traditional eating patterns in many cultures, where the main meal occurs at midday and the evening meal is lighter. Modern schedules often reverse this pattern, with small breakfasts and lunches followed by large dinners. Experimenting with shifting more food to earlier in the day is a reasonable strategy for some people. Meal regularity also matters. Eating at roughly the same times each day helps regulate appetite and may support metabolic health. Erratic eating patterns can disrupt hunger signals and lead to overconsumption when food is available. Part 3. Light and darkness. The biological importance of sunlight. Human bodies evolved under the sun. For most of human history, people spent their days outdoors, exposed to the full spectrum of natural light. Indoor living, with its dim, spectrally limited illumination, is a recent development in evolutionary terms. The body has not fully adapted to this change. The most familiar benefit of sun exposure is vitamin D production. When ultraviolet B radiation strikes skin, it initiates a series of chemical reactions that produce vitamin D, a compound that functions more like a hormone than a vitamin. Vitamin D is essential for calcium absorption and bone health, but its effects extend throughout the body. Receptors for vitamin D are found in most tissues, suggesting broad physiological roles. Beyond vitamin D, sunlight serves as the primary signal for the body's internal clock. Specialized cells in the retina detect the blue wavelengths present in morning sunlight and send signals to the suprachiasmatic nucleus, a cluster of neurons that serves as the master circadian pacemaker. This signal sets the timing for rhythms throughout the body, influencing when people feel alert, when they feel sleepy, and how efficiently they process food. Morning light exposure is particularly important. Bright light in the early part of the day advances the circadian clock, promoting earlier sleep onset and more consolidated sleep at night. This effect is dose-dependent. Brighter light and longer exposure produce stronger signals. The relationship between light and mood is well documented. Seasonal affective disorder demonstrates that insufficient light exposure can trigger depressive symptoms in susceptible people, even in those without clinical seasonal depression. Reduced light exposure correlates with lower mood and energy. The mechanism involves serotonin regulation and the circadian effects already described. Practical sun exposure. Using sunlight for health does not require prolonged exposure that risks skin damage. The goal is regular, brief exposure without burning, typically 10 to 30 minutes on exposed skin several times weekly, depending on skin type, latitude, and season. This provides vitamin D benefits while minimizing risk. For circadian regulation, morning exposure is most valuable. Spending time outdoors in the morning, even on overcast days, provides a stronger light signal than remaining indoors. Cloud cover reduces but does not eliminate the beneficial effects. Simply having breakfast outside, walking to a destination, or sitting near a window with good natural light can provide meaningful exposure. Sun protection should be used when exposure would otherwise be prolonged enough to cause burning. Sunscreen. Protective clothing. and seeking shade during peak ultraviolet hours all reduce skin cancer risk. The goal is not to avoid sun entirely, but to manage exposure appropriately. The night side. Darkness and sleep. Just as light signals activity, darkness signals rest. The hormone melatonin, produced by the pineal gland, rises in response to darkness and helps prepare the body for sleep. Melatonin production is suppressed by light, particularly the blue wavelengths that are abundant in electronic screens. Modern environments are filled with light after dark. Streetlights shine through windows. Televisions glow in living rooms. Phones and tablets are viewed in bed. This artificial light exposure can delay melatonin production, making it harder to fall asleep at desired times and potentially reducing sleep quality. Creating darkness in the hours before sleep supports natural melatonin production. Dimming lights in the evening. Using blackout curtains or shades in bedrooms. And limiting screen time before bed all help maintain appropriate light-dark cycles. For those who use devices in the evening, reducing screen brightness and using blue light filtering settings or glasses may help, though the effectiveness of these measures varies. The sleep environment itself should be as dark as practical. Even small light sources, alarm clock displays, charger indicator lights, streetlight gaps around curtains, can affect sleep quality for sensitive individuals. Covering or eliminating these sources is worth considering. Part 4. Rest and repair. What sleep does. Sleep is not merely a passive absence of wakefulness. It is an active physiological state during which essential maintenance occurs. The brain, which accounts for about 20% of the body's energy consumption, uses sleep to clear metabolic byproducts that accumulate during waking hours. A recently discovered system called the glymphatic system becomes more active during sleep, flushing waste products from brain tissue. One waste product cleared during sleep is beta-amyloid, a protein fragment that forms the plaques characteristic of Alzheimer's disease. The relationship between sleep and beta-amyloid accumulation has been studied extensively. Poor sleep is associated with higher beta-amyloid burden, and higher beta-amyloid burden is associated with poorer sleep, creating a potential feedback loop. Memory consolidation also occurs during sleep. The brain replays patterns of neural activity from waking experiences, strengthening connections that encode memories. Different sleep stages contribute to different types of memory. Deep sleep, or slow-wave sleep, is particularly important for declarative memory, facts, and events. REM sleep contributes to procedural memory and emotional processing. Beyond brain function, sleep affects nearly every physiological system. Growth hormone, important for tissue repair and maintenance, is primarily secreted during deep sleep. Cortisol, the stress hormone, follows a rhythm that depends on sleep timing. Appetite-regulating hormones are influenced by sleep duration and quality. Immune function is enhanced by adequate sleep and impaired by sleep deprivation. The 7-hour observation. Population studies consistently find that adults sleeping fewer than 7 hours per night show increased risks for various health problems. These include cardiovascular disease, metabolic dysfunction such as diabetes, obesity, and cognitive decline. The relationship appears dose-dependent. Shorter sleep is associated with greater risk. 7 hours represents a threshold rather than a target for everyone. Some individuals function optimally on slightly less, some on slightly more. The appropriate duration is one that allows waking feeling rested, maintains stable mood and energy throughout the day, and does not require an alarm clock when sleep is unrestricted. Sleep quality matters as much as quantity. Interrupted sleep, even if total time in bed is adequate, does not provide the same restorative benefits as consolidated sleep. Frequent awakenings prevent the brain from progressing through sleep stages normally, reducing time in the most restorative stages. Factors that influence sleep quality. The timing of caffeine consumption significantly affects sleep for most people. Caffeine blocks adenosine receptors. Adenosine is a compound that accumulates during waking and promotes sleep pressure. The half-life of caffeine varies among individuals, but averages around 5 hours, meaning that half the caffeine consumed at 4 p.m. remains active at 9 p.m. Afternoon and evening caffeine can delay sleep onset and reduce sleep depth. Evening light exposure, already discussed, affects melatonin production and circadian timing. The effect is strongest for bright light and for blue wavelengths. But any light after dark can influence sleep timing for sensitive individuals. Temperature affects sleep. The body's core temperature naturally drops before sleep and remains lower during sleep. A cool sleeping environment supports this process. Most research suggests around 65 degrees Fahrenheit is optimal, though individual preferences vary. Temperatures that are too warm can disrupt sleep by interfering with this natural cooling. Food and drink before bed can interfere with sleep. Large meals require digestive activity that may prevent full relaxation. Spicy foods can cause discomfort. Alcohol, while it may help with falling asleep initially, disrupts sleep architecture and leads to more awakenings in the second half of the night. Fluids consumed close to bedtime may cause nighttime urination that interrupts sleep. Regular physical activity improves sleep quality for most people, though the timing matters. For some, vigorous exercise close to bedtime is stimulating and interferes with sleep. For others, it has no negative effect or even helps. Individual experimentation reveals the optimal timing. Part 5. The mind and its training. Attention and its cultivation. The human mind has a tendency to wander. Left to itself, it generates a stream of thoughts about the past, concerns about the future, judgments about the present. This default mode of mind has its uses: planning, learning from experience, understanding others' perspectives, but it can also create suffering when it becomes excessive or when its content is negative. Cultivating the ability to direct attention deliberately, to choose what the mind focuses on rather than being carried by whatever thought arises, has been practiced in various forms for thousands of years. In recent decades, this set of practices has been studied scientifically, revealing effects on brain structure and function. Regular practitioners of attention training show differences in brain regions involved in attention regulation, emotional control, and self-awareness. The prefrontal cortex, which supports executive functions, tends to be more developed. The amygdala, involved in threat detection and emotional reactivity, shows reduced activity in response to stressors. Connections between these regions are strengthened, allowing better communication between thinking and emotional centers. These brain changes translate into functional differences. Practitioners typically show reduced stress responses, lower cortisol elevations in challenging situations, faster return to baseline after stress. They report improved emotional regulation, less reactivity to negative events, and greater ability to experience positive emotions. Sleep quality often improves, likely through reduced rumination at bedtime. The practical forms of mental training. The term meditation encompasses many different practices with different goals and methods. Concentration practices involve focusing attention on a single object, the breath, a sound, a visual image, and returning attention to that object whenever it wanders. This builds the capacity for sustained attention and reduces the mind's tendency to jump from thought to thought. Mindfulness practices involve observing whatever arises in experience without judgment or reaction. Thoughts, emotions, and sensations are noticed as they occur, allowed to be present, and allowed to pass. This develops the ability to relate to experience differently, to see thoughts as mental events rather than as reality. to experience emotions without being controlled by them. Loving-kindness practices involve generating feelings of goodwill toward oneself and others. Phrases or intentions are repeated, directing wishes for well-being, safety, and happiness first toward oneself, then toward loved ones, then toward neutral persons, then toward difficult persons, and finally toward all beings. This cultivates positive emotional states and may reduce negative attitudes toward others. Body-scan practices involve systematically directing attention through different parts of the body, noticing sensations without trying to change them. This develops body awareness, can help with relaxation, and may improve the mind-body connection. Integrating mental practice into daily life. The benefits of mental training appear to depend more on consistency than on duration. Daily practice of 10 to 20 minutes produces measurable effects over time. Longer sessions may produce additional benefits, but are not necessary for initial results. Morning practice has advantages for many people. The mind is relatively quiet, less filled with the concerns of the day. Completing practice before daily activities begin ensures it happens, before other demands compete for time. The effects of morning practice may carry through the day, supporting greater presence and emotional balance. Evening practice can help with the transition to sleep. The calming effects of meditation can quiet the mind that might otherwise replay the day's events or worry about tomorrow. Practices focused on relaxation or loving-kindness may be particularly suited to evening. Informal practice throughout the day extends the benefits beyond formal sessions, bringing attention to the breath while waiting in line, noticing sensations while walking, observing thoughts without engagement during daily activities. These moments of practice reinforce the skills developed in formal meditation and bring their effects into ordinary life. Part 6. Connection and relationship. The social animal. Humans are profoundly social creatures. The brain evolved to navigate social environments, to understand others' intentions, to cooperate, to compete, to form bonds. Social connection is not merely a pleasant addition to life, but a fundamental need, as basic as food and water in its importance for well-being. Research consistently finds that socially connected people live longer than isolated people. The effect size is substantial, comparable to well-established risk factors like smoking and obesity. This relationship holds across cultures and after accounting for other factors that might explain it, suggesting something fundamental about human biology. The mechanisms linking social connection to health are multiple. Social support buffers the effects of stress, reducing the physiological wear and tear that accumulates over time. People with strong social ties tend to engage in healthier behaviors, perhaps because they have people who care about their well-being and because they have reasons to maintain their health. Direct physiological effects may also operate. Positive social interactions trigger oxytocin release, which has calming effects on the cardiovascular system. The quality of relationships. Not all social contact provides equal benefits. The quality of relationships matters more than quantity. A few close, supportive relationships provide more health protection than many superficial ones. Conflictual relationships, conversely, can be sources of stress that harm health. Loving, committed intimate relationships appear particularly beneficial. The hormonal profile associated with such relationships includes oxytocin, which promotes bonding and calm, and reduced cortisol, indicating lower stress. Physical intimacy within committed relationships reinforces emotional bonds and provides direct physiological benefits through the release of various neurochemicals. The pattern of casual sexual encounters, particularly when frequent and with different partners, may not provide the same benefits. The novelty and unpredictability can drive dopamine release in ways that resemble addictive processes. Over time, this can lead to tolerance, requiring increasing stimulation to achieve the same effect, and withdrawal-type symptoms between encounters. The health effects of this pattern have not been extensively studied, but the hormonal profile differs markedly from that of committed relationships. For those not in intimate partnerships, other forms of close relationship provide meaningful benefits. Deep friendships, connections with family members, involvement in community groups, all can provide the sense of belonging and support that protects health. The key is the quality of connection, not its specific form. Building and maintaining connections. Social connection requires effort and attention, particularly as people age. Work and child rearing, which often provide natural social contact, diminish or disappear. Friends may move away or pass away. The structures that once facilitated connection no longer operate. Deliberate effort to maintain and build connections becomes important. Regular contact with existing friends, even if brief, keeps relationships alive. Seeking new connections through shared activities, book groups, walking clubs, volunteer organizations, classes, creates opportunities for new relationships to form. Intergenerational connection deserves particular attention. Contact with younger people provides perspective, keeps older adults connected to changing times, and can be deeply satisfying for both generations. Programs that facilitate such contact exist in many communities, but informal connections through family and neighborhood can serve the same purpose. The quality of interactions matters. Being fully present with others, listening deeply, sharing authentically, these create the kind of connection that benefits health. Superficial contact, while better than none, does not provide the same depth of support. Part 7. Purpose and engagement. The need for meaning. Humans appear to have a fundamental need for meaning, a sense that life has purpose, that activities matter, that one's existence makes sense within some larger framework. This need is not merely philosophical, but has measurable health implications. Research on purpose in life finds that people with a strong sense of purpose live longer than those without. They have lower rates of cardiovascular disease, better cognitive function as they age, and greater resilience in the face of health challenges. The effect is independent of other factors like optimism or social connection, suggesting something unique about purpose itself. The mechanisms are not fully understood, but likely involve both behavioral and physiological pathways. People with purpose take better care of themselves, perhaps because they have reasons to maintain their health. They handle stress better, with reduced physiological responses to challenges. They may have greater motivation to engage in health-promoting activities and to persist through difficulties. Forms of purpose. Purpose takes many forms. For some, it comes from work, a career that provides meaning through contribution, creativity, or service. For others, family provides purpose, raising children, supporting grandchildren, maintaining family connections. For still others, purpose comes from community involvement, creative expression, spiritual practice, or simply the commitment to live fully and well. The specific form matters less than the presence of something that feels meaningful. Purpose is not a one-size-fits-all concept, but a deeply personal sense that one's life has direction and significance. What provides meaning for one person may feel empty to another. Purpose can also evolve with age. The purposes that drove someone in midlife may no longer fit in later years. Children grow and need different kinds of support. Careers end. Physical capacities change. Finding new sources of meaning is part of successful aging, not a sign of failure. Engagement with life. Purpose connects to the broader concept of engagement, being actively involved in life rather than passively observing it. Engaged people have interests they pursue, activities they look forward to, reasons to get up in the morning. They are participants in their own lives, not spectators. Engagement can take countless forms. Learning new things, a language, a skill, a subject of interest, keeps the mind active and provides a sense of progress. Creative activities, painting, writing, music, gardening, provide expression and often produce tangible results. Physical activities, already discussed, provide engagement through movement and often through social connection. Volunteering provides purpose through contribution and connection to community. The key is finding activities that provide genuine engagement, that absorb attention, that feel meaningful, that generate the state sometimes called flow. This state, characterized by complete absorption in an activity, loss of self-consciousness, and distorted time perception, is associated with well-being and appears to be a hallmark of full engagement with life. Part 8. Environment and context. The spaces we inhabit. The environments people inhabit shape their behavior in ways both obvious and subtle. A kitchen with visible, accessible healthy foods promotes better eating than one where such foods are hidden and processed foods are prominent. A neighborhood with walkable streets and nearby destinations promotes more walking than one designed for cars alone. A home with natural light and views of nature supports better mood and circadian function than one that is dark and enclosed. These environmental effects operate largely outside conscious awareness. People do not decide each day whether to be influenced by their surroundings. The influence is automatic, continuous, and powerful. Changing environments can be more effective than trying to change behavior through willpower alone. The concept of choice architecture captures this insight. By designing environments that make healthy choices easier and unhealthy choices harder, people can shape their behavior without constant effort. A bowl of fruit on the counter, easily visible and accessible, increases fruit consumption compared to fruit hidden in the refrigerator. Walking shoes placed by the door, ready to put on, increase the likelihood of walking compared to shoes stored in a closet. Natural environments. Time spent in natural environments appears to have particular benefits. Attention restoration theory proposes that natural environments engage attention in a different way than urban environments, gently, without demanding constant focus, allowing directed attention to rest and replenish. This may explain why people often feel restored after time in nature, even without vigorous activity. Natural environments also tend to have different sensory characteristics than built environments. The visual patterns of nature, complex, fractal, varied, differ from the straight lines and regular geometries of human construction. These patterns may engage the visual system in ways that reduce cognitive load. Sounds of nature, birdsong, water flowing, wind and leaves differ from the intermittent, unpredictable sounds of human environments and may promote relaxation. Access to natural environments is not equally available to all, but even limited contact provides benefits. A park visited regularly, a garden tended at home, a view of trees from a window. These smaller contacts with nature can provide some of the benefits of more extensive natural experience. The built environment. For those who cannot easily access natural environments, attention to the built environment matters. Homes can be arranged to support health. Good lighting, particularly exposure to natural light during the day and the ability to create darkness at night, supports circadian function. Spaces that invite movement, stairs used rather than elevators. Spaces that require walking between them, increase activity. Places for sitting and connecting with others support social health. Reducing environmental toxins is worth considering, though the evidence for many common concerns is mixed. Good ventilation reduces indoor air pollutants. Simple water filters can address common contaminants. Choosing products with fewer synthetic chemicals may reduce exposure to compounds of concern. These measures should be proportionate. The goal is reasonable reduction of exposure, not elimination of all possible risks. Part 9. The integration of habits. How practices support each other. The habits described in this exploration do not operate in isolation. They form a connected system in which each practice supports and amplifies the others. Understanding these connections helps explain why the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Regular physical activity improves sleep quality, which enhances cognitive function and emotional regulation, which supports better food choices. Good nutrition provides energy for movement and the raw materials for neurotransmitter production that supports mood. Sunlight exposure regulates circadian timing, improving both sleep and daytime alertness. Social connection provides motivation for activity and reasons to maintain health. Purpose gives direction to all these efforts. This synergy means that improvements in one area tend to create improvements in others. A person who begins walking regularly may find that sleep improves, which makes it easier to make good food choices, which provides more energy for walking, which creates opportunities for social connection through walking with others. The system reinforces itself. It also means that deterioration in one area can create deterioration in others. Poor sleep impairs judgment about food, reduces motivation for activity, and strains relationships through irritability. Understanding these connections helps identify where to intervene when things go wrong. The timing of change. Changing multiple habits simultaneously is difficult. Each new habit requires attention and effort until it becomes automatic. Attempting too many changes at once overwhelms the capacity for self-regulation, leading to failure in all areas. A more effective approach is sequential change, adding one new habit at a time, allowing it to become established before adding another. The order of addition can be chosen based on personal priorities and on which changes might create momentum for others. Improving sleep, for example, might make other changes easier by improving cognitive function and emotional regulation. The time required for a habit to become automatic varies. Simple habits in stable contexts may become automatic in a few weeks. More complex habits or those in variable contexts may take longer. The key is persistence, continuing the practice until it no longer requires conscious effort. Individual variation. The recommendations in this exploration describe patterns observed in populations. They are not rules that apply identically to every individual. People differ in their genetics, their medical histories, their current health status, their preferences, and their circumstances. These differences matter. Some people thrive on 8 hours of sleep while others need 7. Some feel best with a diet higher in plant foods while others include more animal products. Some find meditation easy and natural while others struggle with it. Some are energized by social contact while others need more solitude. The task for each person is to take the general principles and adapt them to individual circumstances. This requires self-experimentation, trying approaches, observing effects, adjusting based on results. It requires paying attention to how the body and mind respond, not just following external recommendations. For those with existing health conditions or who take medications, consultation with healthcare providers is appropriate when making significant changes. Some conditions require specific modifications to general recommendations. Some medications interact with foods or activities in ways that require attention. Part 10. A calm perspective on longevity. The limits of control. A complete discussion of longevity must acknowledge what cannot be controlled. Genetics play a role in how people age and how long they live. Some families produce nonagenarians and centenarians regularly. Others have patterns of earlier mortality regardless of lifestyle. Chance events, accidents, infections, environmental exposures affect health outcomes in ways that cannot be predicted or prevented. Acknowledging these limits is not defeatist. It is realistic. It frees people from the burden of believing that perfect adherence to healthy habits guarantees a long life. No such guarantee exists. What healthy habits offer is a shift in probabilities, making favorable outcomes more likely, unfavorable outcomes less likely, over the long term. This probabilistic view changes how people might relate to health practices, rather than performing them in anxious pursuit of a guaranteed outcome. They can perform them as expressions of self-care, as investments in the best possible future, as ways of living well regardless of how long life ultimately proves to be. The quality of years. Discussions of longevity can become fixated on quantity, on adding years to life. Important as this is, it is not the whole story. The quality of those years matters at least as much. A long life spent in declining health, limited function, and suffering is not the goal. A life that maintains the capacity to do what matters, to engage with what is meaningful, to experience joy and connection. This is the deeper aim. The habits that support longevity also support quality of life. Physical activity maintains the ability to move independently, to travel, to play with grandchildren. Good nutrition supports energy and mental clarity. Sleep restores and repairs. Social connection provides emotional support and shared experience. Purpose gives direction and meaning. These qualities, independence, engagement, connection, meaning, are worth pursuing for their own sakes, regardless of their effects on lifespan. That they also appear to extend life is a fortunate alignment, not the primary reason for their value. The long view. Adopting healthy habits is not about perfection. It is not about never missing a day of walking, never eating a food that could be better, never having a poor night's sleep. Such perfection is impossible, and pursuing it creates unnecessary stress. The long view recognizes that consistency over time matters more than perfection at any moment. A person who walks most days, eats well most meals, sleeps adequately most nights, connects with others regularly will experience the benefits even with occasional lapses. The body responds to patterns over months and years, not to single events. This perspective allows for flexibility and self-compassion. When life disrupts routines, illness, travel, family needs, work demands, adjustments are made. When the disruption passes, habits are resumed. No guilt is necessary. No sense of failure. Just the ongoing practice of living in ways that support health, as consistently as circumstances allow. A closing observation. The oldest known human on record lived to 122 years. She smoked for much of her life, which reminds us that outliers exist and that individual cases prove nothing about general patterns. What the research on healthy longevity reveals is not certainty, but probability, not guarantees, but tendencies. Those tendencies point toward a life of moderate, consistent movement, of food chosen from the whole, unprocessed spectrum, of light during the day and darkness at night, of adequate, quality sleep, of mental training that cultivates attention and emotional balance, of deep connection with others, of engagement with activities that provide meaning, of environments that support rather than undermine health. These are not revolutionary ideas. They are not secrets withheld by any group. They are observations about human life that have been made in various forms across cultures and throughout history. Modern research has confirmed many of them and provided mechanistic understanding of why they work. But the core insights are ancient and widely available. The challenge is not in knowing what supports health. The challenge is in living it, in translating understanding into practice, day after day, year after year. This is the real work of healthy longevity, not the acquisition of information, but its integration into the fabric of ordinary life. For those who undertake this work, the rewards are not distant and abstract. They are present in each day, in the energy to do what matters, the clarity to think clearly, the emotional balance to handle what comes, the connections that give life warmth. These are worth having regardless of how many years ultimately accumulate. That they also tend to bring more years is simply an added gift. The habits that support a long and healthy life are not secrets to be discovered, but practices to be lived. They ask nothing more than this: that we show up each day, move our bodies, choose real food, rest deeply, connect genuinely, and find meaning in whatever time we have. This is the quiet work of healthy aging, not perfection, but persistence. Not guarantees, but probabilities improved. We would love to hear what these ideas bring up for you. What habits have you found that support your own vitality? What questions remain? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this exploration has been valuable, the Longevity Library holds many more conversations like this one. Subscribe so you do not miss them. This is the Longevity Library. Listen, learn, and live longer.